A dilettante? Yeah, dabbler's a good definition. Amateur, am I spelling this right? Or is it two T's in the middle? Two T's. There we are, yep. But it originally was not such a bad thing, right? People didn't always have to be experts in order to enjoy what they were doing, right? So enthusiast, right? It can mean enthusiast, or it can mean a dabbler, right? Although I don't know exactly why these are in the same definition. Those seem pretty opposed to one another, right? But people weren't always professionals at what they did. It was acceptable to dabble because you didn't have disciplinary boundaries between different fields, because not all knowledge was sort of hyper-categorized so that there was only one way of knowing something and one way of explaining things, right? Now it's helpful for people to be experts because then they can really capture a specific idea and they can come up with new ideas more quickly and there will be less confusion. However, the knowledge that they produce will be rather specialized, and if it's clear, it's also sometimes hard to comprehend exactly what they're doing with it, right? So if Gladwell's a dilettante, an amateur, a dabbler, then Pinker sort of positions himself as an expert. Where do we see some of his expertise coming through? So Pinker corrects Gladwell on a number of points, right? What are some of the points he corrects him on? Where Gladwell uses a word and doesn't exactly capture its meaning, right? Now Pinker doesn't provide us with the appropriate definitions for these. So what does it do to list a bunch of words that Gladwell doesn't seem to understand? To sort of just point out that these are terms that are misused. Okay, so Gladwell's not an expert. He doesn't have an understanding on the things that he's talking about, and he only gets his information secondhand from people, so he's not able to think it through. Right. Yeah. Yeah. What's it do to talk about it with respect to specific terms, though? That's right.
Wait, what did you just say?
Right. So if one of the major problems is that Gladwell doesn't understand the concepts he's using, right? What does it do for Pinker to list a number of the concepts, but he doesn't define them? I mean, that's just one of a number of ways that he attacks Gladwell, right? So just like this particular sentence, like, if he's taking Gladwell down for not understanding the concepts he's using, but sort of regurgitating bits of information without having wholly digested them, right? What does it do to, then how do we understand a sentence that just lists a bunch of words that Gladwell didn't use properly? Okay, so you don't know what the words mean either when you read. It's a critique, it's not a correction. I like that. Yeah. So he's listing a number of terms that Gladwell didn't understand as examples of the proposition that Gladwell doesn't understand what he's talking about. So they're just examples, and you would say that it's still effective and that it's sort of not on Pinker to go out of his way to explain all of these, yeah. Right? Okay, I like that, and I like how you're. So that's an interesting. So that's an interesting defense. What you're doing is you're folding in a potential problem there, where Pinker is giving a bunch of really hard concepts, right? Without explaining them, as he critiques Gladwell for giving a bunch of hard concepts while explaining them poorly, right? So it seems like barely an improvement, right? Except that if you put it that way, so that would be like, that would be drawing, so that would be the first step of a critique, right? would be to draw Pinker into a contradiction, right? To say, oh, you're criticizing Gladwell for not defining these terms he's using, right? And apparently not understanding them, but you yourself don't define them at all, right? But what Sam's saying is that, well, that's not what he's trying to do, right? Sam's saying what he's trying to do for us to show just how broad the errors that Malcolm Gladwell is making are. I think it's more a problem of just space, right? So if Gladwell's making like, you know, errors 1 through 90, right, on specific terms, and Pinker's got what, like 800 words in a New York Times review to take them apart, then he's got to sort of like focus his energies, right? But if he only focuses on one thing, then it's going to make it look like he's just being nitpicky, right? I mean, his whole article was Malcolm Gladwell doesn't know what an eigenvalue is, right? That might not be the most compelling argument in the world that his books suck, right? So he gives us a list of the things that he does, right? But then he also symptomatizes, right? He sort of like blows it up and tries to turn it into a picture of a larger problem that Gladwell has, right? And we've called that dilettantism. We've called it amateurism, right? What's the term he uses for that in his essay? Yeah, the eigenvalue problem, right? Oh, really? Oh, it's right above us. Eigen. Oh, yeah, that's cute. Okay, I forgot he misspelled it on purpose. Right. So it's the eigenvalue problem, right? And this is a rather mean way of putting it. When a writer's education on a topic consists in interviewing an expert, he is apt to offer generalizations that are banal, obtuse, or flat wrong. Okay. That's pretty critical. That's the idea that we were talking about, right? This is more or less the dilettantism. This is the problem of only getting your information secondhand. It's the problem of repurposing information without really understanding its context, right? Then he's got a second large problem, right? And these two are related. So what's the straw we? Does anyone know what he's riffing on here? What straw is? Does that sound familiar to anybody? So this is sort of like a this is like a rhetorical sophism, the straw man argument, right? Where okay, sure, why not? So like Sarah Palin, right, is going to stand up and say like, President Obama thinks that private industry can't do anything, but I think that you need to have, private industry job growth, right? It's just not true. Like what you do is you invent a false opponent in order to take down their ideas, right? So like you come up with a characterization of either a specific person's ideas, but usually it's just like, there are people out there who say, right, when in fact there probably aren't any people out there who say that, right? So that's the straw man argument, where you're setting up a dummy to just beat up, right?